Next from Springfield, we talk with Bill Fleischli, whose association represents gas station owners. We hear why he says the push to increase the amount of ethanol in gasoline from 10% to 15% is a bad deal for consumers and could damage both cars and motorcycles. This runs about 10 minutes.
Bill Fleischli, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel. And one of the things we wanted to discuss with you is there has been a proposal offered several times that would change the amount of ethanol that is blended into gasoline and that which all of us as consumers buy at the pumps. Right now, just for the consumers to remind them, we have E10, as I understand, about 10% of the gasoline is ethanol blend, and that there's a proposal to raise that to 15%. Now, your association represents the gas station dealers around the state of Illinois. Do you have any concerns or issues with this proposal, and if so, what?
Well, the concern is it's a 50% increase in the amount of ethanol. No engine manufacturer, small or big, has recommended that we do this. There's a possibility that if you run the higher blend of ethanol in your car and it is not acceptable, that you avoid your warranty. The underground tanking system that we have, all the dispensers that we have, 90% of those are not warranted or certified for higher blends of ethanol. When all that happens, you jeopardize your customer, but you also jeopardize our infrastructure and the environment if something would happen.
So just to go over those points, because people sometimes you blink and you miss on an important point. So if your car is not brand new, as I understand it, if it's older than about 2 years old, the newer cars are called flex fuel, right?
That's correct.
If your car is older than 2 years old, which I would say the vast majority of people are probably driving cars older than 2 years old, you're saying that raising the alcohol level to 15% per gallon would damage the motors in those cars, those motorcycles, those lawnmowers, those boats.
That is correct. And it's not me saying that, it's the manufacturers of those engines. Now, the EPA says 201 and forward is okay. But 201 forward is okay to use E15. But all the manufacturers of those products have said no. The warranty will be voided, and you could damage your engine if you use the higher blend of ethanol, which is 15%.
And why would a higher blend of ethanol, which is alcohol, why would that damage the engine?
I think it runs hotter, burns hotter. I'm not a scientist nor physicist. I don't know exactly, but it does do damage to the carburation systems and things like that. And it also has a corrosive factor that can corrode the engine parts.
You, again, represent the gas station owners, and so they put in tanks under the ground. They put in pumps that we all utilize to put gas in our car. What impact from an operational standpoint would that have on your membership?
If your tanks are not compatible and your dispensers are not compatible, PEI, which is the Petroleum Equipment Institute that tells you what it's going to cost, it'll cost you for 2 dispensers and a new tank about $150,000. Now, if you had more dispensers, it's probably $25,000 a dispenser. So you could get very easily, in one site, if you have 6 dispensers, it could cost you $250,000. Now, if you have 10 facilities and you have to do that, that's $2.5 million. It becomes a great expense, and it also puts a liability maybe upon us.
Some of those who are proponents of this say that you could do it for much less by just retrofitting your pumps. Is that a valid point?
It is a point being made, but if you retrofit and the retrofit is not acceptable to the maker of the pumps, Gilbarco, all those people that make the pumps, then your pump will not be certified by them, and you have uncertified equipment. Some damage occurs, they won't stand behind you.
I guess to make an analogy, so, if we buy a brand new Ford engine but change the carburetor out or something, then Ford might say we're not going to warranty it anymore because it's no longer our parts.
Yeah, they will say it. It's not warranted. That's why you go back to your Ford dealership to have your work done with your warranty, because they are the ones that do the parts and the people that know what they're doing.
So same with your pumps. Yes. You're saying that.
Absolutely.
So who is proposing this, and have you had an opportunity to raise some of these objections with the proponents, and if so, what is their reply?
First of all, I want to make sure that everybody knows that our association has sold more ethanol than probably any other group of people in the United States of America. We've been selling for 35 years, 10% blend. We're for it, we want to do it, but we want to do it in a right and proper manner, that our customers are serviced and the environment and our infrastructure is okay. It's mostly the people that are in the renewable fuels area. Corn growers and those type people want this to move forward because they want to sell more ethanol, which is a noble idea. But you can't do it, we can't do it if we have liability, and we can't do it if our infrastructure has to be, changed out, and we run the risk of having a catastrophic problem with one of our pumps or one of our tanks that'll cause contamination. And there's some thought out there that if we do this with E15, that the underground storage tank program that's in effect we won't be eligible for the underground storage tank program, leaking underground storage tank program, because this is a not certified product.
Before we jump into that issue, let's just take, this number one is not at the federal level, this is within Illinois that's being proposed, is that right?
Well, there's two things at the federal level. One, are trying to reduce the amount of ethanol, because it's in the Renewable Fuels Association, or the Renewable Fuels Act from the Congress. The blending, the amount of ethanol to be used at the federal level, or in the country, was based on 2006 numbers. What happened is 2006 was a banner year. From 2006 to 2013, we have dropped about 2% a year in volume use.
Volume use of gasoline?
Of gasoline. So when they used the 2006 numbers, they projected that as we move into the 2010, 2013 era, that we would use more gasoline. So we would use at a 10% blend more ethanol. Well, we've run into what's called a blend wall. We don't use enough gasoline. I know.
Let me, I think I understand what you're saying. Let me see if I can rephrase this just a touch. So in 2006, they projected, they wanted, I guess, ethanol to be 10% of the volume sold. Is that right?
That's correct.
But they projected into the future a number that is, in fact, not accurate. So in other words, they said we were going to be selling in 2013 a lot more gasoline than is actually being sold in 2013. One, because the economy slowed down, and probably two, because we're getting more miles per gallon in cars these years. So, but what hasn't changed is the mandated amount of ethanol that
gallons to be used. Okay. So we run into a wall. We were not going to be able to increase it unless we either increase the gallons of gasoline we use or the gallons of ethanol in the gasoline. So that's the blend wall that we're coming up against. That's at the federal level. At the state level, this is nothing but it's a concern from the corn growers and those people to increase the amount of ethanol used.
So at the federal level, is there a receptive ear to, what is it, the EPA that's mandating this, or who? And is there a receptive ear to cut back on the amount of ethanol that has to be sold?
There are proposals out there to reduce the amount of ethanol from the Renewable Fuels Act, to alter the Renewable Fuels Act, and they have not been acted upon in Congress as of yet.
And the question initially came up, is this proposal to have the E15 at the state or local level? Now, a simple answer is right now at the state level is what we're talking about, but is there also a move to do this nationally?
Yes, they want to increase it because of the blend wall.
Right.
But ethanol is now an area where they won't use any more. In fact, they use less because our gallons continue to go down.
So that's why by raising the percentage, we're going to hit those numbers of ethanol gallons sold or utilized in the course of a year, which is okay. But getting back to that, so here we are in Illinois. It is not now the law, but it has been offered as a bill on an ongoing basis in, the past several legislatures?
Yes, about the last 3 or 4 legislatures. And it has not progressed to a point that it's passed yet. So we just want to keep people informed on this. We are not against it. We want, when the time comes and the market is right, ethanol is going to be a big player in the gasoline industry in Illinois.
Let me see if I can rephrase that, because when you say you're not against it, it strikes, I think, me and probably listeners as going, well, wait a minute, you just offered all the reasons why we shouldn't do it. It would seem to me you are against it at this point, that you mean you're not, your heels aren't dug in, you're not against ethanol per se, but you're saying that until the market of cars perhaps comes down the road to where people can actually utilize this, that you don't want to
the cars can use it, and our infrastructure is certified to actually retail it. Those are the two big things or concerns that we have.
The other thing is, let me ask, do we ship this ethanol? Do we ship it through pipelines, or where is it blended? Does it come to you blended? Do you guys? How does that work?
We buy it blended now. We used to blend it ourselves. We buy it blended now at the rack terminals. The ethanol is produced. A lot of the ethanol is produced in Illinois. Most of it's produced in the Midwest, and it is either trucked or trained to the facilities. As of yet, pipelines don't move it, because I think of their acceptability of ethanol to accept moisture, and also the corrosive factor that sometimes they're worried about in the pipelines. So it's not a pipeline as of yet. It's shipped by train or by rail, and I guess by barge if you're acceptable to barge where your terminal is.
And then one last thing, as we just mentioned, it was offered the last several legislatures. Two things. One, what kind of support has it had? In other words, how likely is it to pass in the future? And secondly, when you raise these issues with lawmakers who are backing raising the mandated amount to E15, are they taking your points, or is it kind of falling on deaf ears?
No, they have taken our points. They have in the Senate committee. They held the bill. Although there's a lot of concern that it's a big agriculture is a big market, a big business in Illinois. But they have taken the concerns about the cars dealers and the car manufacturers, the engine manufacturers, the marine engines, small engines, all those people's concerns, all those companies' concerns have been met. So it's held in committee now, but it's still every year that this thing can grow and can get some momentum. And we just want to make sure that everybody knows what's happening here.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.